Imagine diplomats sipping espresso in this pristine, quiet conference room in Switzerland, just trading these carefully worded proposals.
Right.
And then, I mean, you look at the other side of the world and you have massive commercial oil tankers dodging actual naval mines in the Middle East, shadowed by warships.
It's a massive disconnect.
It really is. Today, we're looking at a world that feels split right down the middle. We have the illusion of diplomatic control on one side and then the physical reality of brute force on the other.
Yeah, and it's playing out on a day that already feels incredibly, loaded with meaning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for you, the listener tuning in to today's deep dive, just take a look at the calendar. It is Sunday, June 21st, 2026.
Which is a huge day.
Right. Astronomically, it's the summer solstice, so the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. Culturally, it's Father's Day. And historically, we are right in the middle of the Juneteenth holiday weekend.
It's one of those really rare days where so many different currents of time just kind of collide all at once.
Exactly, which serves as a fascinating backdrop for the stack of sources we are pulling from today's edition of the Daily Tech Reader.
It's a really great stack today, too.
It is. The mission of this deep dive is to explore exactly how these high-stakes global geopolitical crises are, like crashing right into deeply personal stories.
Yeah, we're looking at human legacy, physical health, and the literal future of the environments we are building.
We're covering everything from naval standoffs to childhood obesity data, just to see how they're actually operating inside the exact same global ecosystem. So, okay, let's unpack this, starting with the literal geopolitical chessboard that is shaping the week.
Right, and the center of that board is currently locked on the Strait of Hormuz, and the absolute diplomatic scramble trying to keep it open.
Yeah. So let's lay out the facts for you here. Vice President J.D. Vance has just arrived in Switzerland.
Which is for technical-level nuclear talks with Iran.
Right, and we actually only know these talks are happening because Pakistan's foreign ministry acted as a back channel and confirmed the session.
Yeah, that was a really interesting detail.
Totally. Now, on the Iranian side, their deputy foreign minister told Al Jazeera that Tehran is, quote, ready to move forward with diplomacy. But they attached a massive caveat.
They always do.
Right. Iran is demanding that the U.S. ensure Israel abides by the deal terms to end the war in southern Lebanon.
Because just since dawn on Saturday, at least 32 people have died there.
Yeah, it's brutal. And this is where that disconnect between the conference room and the real world becomes, frankly, terrifying. While those diplomats are sitting at a table, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is functionally closed.
And they are directly citing those strikes in southern Lebanon as their justification.
Exactly. And the central route of the strait is currently blocked by naval mines. I want to pause on that for a second because I think people hear Strait of Hormuz on the news so often it just becomes like background noise.
Right, just another geography term.
Exactly. To put this in perspective for you listening, this is a 21-mile wide stretch of water. Roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes through this specific choke point.
It's massive.
If naval mines block it, we aren't just talking about a political spat. We're talking about global shipping insurance skyrocketing instantly, which immediately hikes the price of the gas you put in your car.
Precisely. I mean, the whole global economy relies on that water remaining navigable. And right now, the U.S. Navy is flat out denying that Iran actually has control of the waterway.
Right, because American warships are actively escorting commercial ships through the northern and southern channels just to keep the supply chain moving.
Yeah.
But wait, if the Navy is escorting ships, who actually has the upper hand right now? Like, is the strait essentially a partially blocked artery of global trade, and the U.S. Navy is acting like a temporary medical stent to keep the lifeblood of oil flowing?
What's fascinating here is that your medical analogy perfectly illustrates the precariousness of the situation. Well, a stent forces an artery open, right? But it doesn't cure the underlying heart disease. The Navy can physically shield a tanker, but they can't erase the geopolitical tension.
Ah, that makes sense.
Diplomacy relies entirely on the illusion of control. But the physical reality of the Strait of Hormuz right now is governed strictly by brute force and immediate peril.
And the rhetoric back home is mirroring that peril. Like, on Face the Nation, Senator Lindsey Graham predicted that this Swiss diplomatic track is going to fail entirely.
Yeah, he was pretty blunt about it.
He stated that former President Trump's contingency plan is to simply take physical control of the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump himself has threatened to strike Iran if it didn't stop Hezbollah from causing trouble.
Which naturally immediately prompted Iran's chief nuclear negotiator to warn the U.S. to be careful with their statements.
Right. And just to be completely clear to you listening, we're strictly playing the messengers here.
That's
Whether it is Vice President Vance's diplomacy, the threats from former President Trump and Senator Graham, or Iran's specific demands, we aren't taking a side or endorsing any political viewpoint.
No, not at all. We are just looking at the board exactly as the Daily Tech Reader sources lay it out, just to understand the mechanics of the standoff.
Exactly. We are just reading the play calls. And honestly, the American public seems incredibly skeptical of all these plays. A new CBS News poll shows that most Americans suspect Iran's nuclear program was never actually halted by any of the recent exchanges.
And furthermore, a majority doubt that the conflict was even worth the financial and human cost to begin with.
That puts immense public pressure on the Vance talks. And it obviously puts pressure on the global markets.
Oh, heavily.
U.S. markets are closed today for Sunday, but Brent crude oil is holding above $80 a barrel right now. That is purely a geopolitical risk premium.
Yeah, it's completely reactive to the news.
And tomorrow, when the markets open, including SPCX, SpaceX, resuming trading after the Juneteenth weekend, I mean, every trader on the floor is going to be watching the Strait.
The tension is inescapable. It just permeates everything.
It really does. And it doesn't just stay confined to naval bases or trading floors. It spills right over onto the actual playing field. Let's look at what happened in Los Angeles yesterday at SoFi Stadium. Day 11 of the World Cup.
Yeah, the timing of this match couldn't have been more dramatic if it was scripted by Hollywood.
Seriously. Belgium and Iran played what the sources are calling a highly geopolitically charged match. It ended in a tense 0-0 draw.
And Iran's goalkeeper, Alireza Baranvand, had an absolute masterclass of a game. I think he had 7 saves.
7 saves, yeah. And the physicality was intense. Belgium actually went down a man when Nathan Ngoy got a red card in the 66th minute for a heavy foul on Mehdi Taremi.
Wow.
So Iran now leads Group G. And just to round out the bracket from the sources, over in Group H, Spain just absolutely routed Saudi Arabia 4-0.
It is practically impossible to separate the sport from the global context right now. The players on that pitch at SoFi Stadium are representing nations entangled in the very nuclear and military standoffs we were just discussing.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Historically, sports have always functioned as a sort of pressure valve for international conflict. You know, it provides a safe, enclosed arena with strict rules where geopolitical tension can be acted out without actual warfare.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because on the exact same day, sports provided a completely different kind of theater, one that stripped away all that global complexity.
You're talking about the golf.
Yes. Over at Shinnecock Hills, Wyndham Clark won his second U.S. Open. He took home $4.5 million out of a record $22.5 million purse.
Which is incredible money.
But the mechanics of this win were brutal.
Yeah, it was a wire-to-wire win, which is incredibly rare. It is only the 9th in the entire history of the U.S. Open.
But he almost lost it. He had a 6-shot lead that essentially evaporated down to a single stroke against Sam Burns.
Oh, it's rough.
And if you know anything about the crowd at Shinnecock, they are a notoriously tough New York crowd. When they smell blood, they get incredibly hostile.
Right, they were actively rooting for a collapse.
Exactly. But Clark pulls it off with this clutch birdie from the deep fescue grass on the 16th hole.
Surviving that kind of psychological pressure is what defines a legacy in golf.
But the sources highlight another moment from Shinnecock that happened entirely away from the leaderboard. 17-year-old amateur Miles Russell is making his final walk up the 18th hole.
Such a great story.
And for that final stretch, he has his father, Joe, take over as his caddy. The crowd, the exact same hostile crowd that was roaring against Wyndham Clark, gives this father and son the warmest, most incredible reception for Father's Day.
Yeah.
Russell has been drawing comparisons to Jordan Spieth, but in that moment, literally nobody cared about the scorecard.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you really see the dual nature of what we doled. A stadium can be a proxy for a nuclear standoff, but it's also a timeless stage for pure human connection.
Yeah, that's beautifully put.
Watching a father literally carry the weight for his son on the 18th fairway, it strips away the geopolitical noise. It is just a universal image of passing the baton to the next generation.
Passing the baton. That image of the 18th green is such a vivid picture of legacy. But handing down a legacy isn't usually that peaceful or neat. Most of the time, it's an absolute grind.
It really is. Legacy is a very heavy word, especially on Father's Day. and it operates on multiple levels.
Let's start with cultural legacy. The sources report the passing of James Burroughs at age 85. Now, his name might only ring a bell if you obsessively read opening credits, but he was the director who fundamentally built the visual and comedic grammar of Friends, Cheers, and Will and Grace.
The Daily Tech Reader actually calls him the most influential sitcom director of his generation. He didn't just point cameras. He engineered how American network comedy was paced for 4 decades.
Which makes me wonder, is James Burroughs essentially the invisible father of the modern American sitcom?
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Think about the mechanics of what he did. He perfected the multi-camera setup. He dictated the rhythm of a punchline. He practically raised millions of viewers, teaching us how to understand the concept of a found family in our living rooms without most of us ever knowing his face.
Right. He built a cultural legacy that operates quietly in the background of our collective memory. It is a passive inheritance for the viewer. But for the people left behind, managing a legacy is rarely passive. Look at the music industry story from today.
Oh, right. Shooter Jennings. He was on CBS Sunday Morning talking about his new album, Diamonds. It's this deeply emotional project where he is actively rescuing the lost music of his late father, the legendary Waylon Jennings.
And he actually managed to rediscover and isolate a guitar track played by Glenn Campbell.
Yeah. Shooter described the project as part preservation and part reckoning with his father's outlaw country image. He can't just let the music sit in a vault, you know. He has to actively dig it up, produce it, and piece his father's history back together.
And that active, relentless construction of legacy is exactly what we are seeing in the political sphere right now, too.
We are. And again, just to level with you listening, we aren't validating or criticizing these specific political administrations. We are just looking at the mechanics of how they are choosing to cement their history, impartially based on the sources.
Exactly. So how are these figures building their monuments?
Well, in Chicago, the Obama Presidential Center officially opened to the public this Juneteenth weekend on the South Side in Jackson Park. Former President Obama, Michelle Obama, and their daughters were all there. Which
represents a massive years-in-the-making civic and financial investment in a physical space.
Massive. Meanwhile, looking ahead to July 4th, the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library is opening in the Badlands of Medora, North Dakota, 107 years after his death.
Wow.
It is an immersive facility heavily focused on his vision for conservation.
See, those are examples of legacies being locked into brick and mortar. But across the Atlantic, we are watching a legacy fighting just to survive the week.
Oh, you mean in the UK?
Yeah. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing a severe leadership challenge from Labour Party rival Andy Burnham. The sources specifically cite poor local election results and massive public dissatisfaction with how Starmer is handling the UK economy and public services.
So he is having to decide today whether to step down or fight a brutal battle to preserve his political life.
Right. And the common thread weaving through all these stories, from a sitcom director to a prime minister, is that legacy is never a finished product. We tend to think of a legacy as a statue.
Right, like something set in stone.
Exactly. But whether you are a son engineering a lost guitar track to keep your father's outlaw image alive, a former president funding a massive civic center, or a sitting leader fighting off a political rival, legacy requires active management. It's a constant daily negotiation with the present.
That daily negotiation is a great way to look at it, because mentioning Teddy Roosevelt's conservation legacy brings us to the most urgent daily negotiation we have, the state of the environments we are leaving to the next generation.
Yeah, and I don't just mean the physical climate, but the digital ecosystem as well. The environments we engineer directly dictate the health and behavior of our society.
Let's look at the physical environment first. Today is the summer solstice, but for millions of people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, this astronomical milestone is overshadowed by a brutal heat dome.
Ugh, those are awful.
For those who don't know, a heat dome is essentially a massive system of high pressure that traps hot air over a region like a lid on a pot. We are talking about heat indices pushed well over 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's incredibly dangerous.
The National Weather Service expects it to weaken midweek as a northern front approaches, but it is dangerous right now. Meanwhile, the Gulf Coast is currently recovering from Tropical Storm Arthur.
But there's some good news there, right?
Yes. The good news there is that major roads are reopening across Louisiana and Mississippi. And officials in New Orleans noted that their city's sprawling drainage system actually performed better than expected against the record rainfall.
So we see physical infrastructure, like massive pumps and spillways, successfully holding up against environmental extremes. But the sources pivot to an entirely different kind of environment, where the infrastructure is invisible.
And this is where the stakes get incredibly high. In Colombia today, there is a tight presidential runoff election. It is between a progressive candidate and a conservative outsider.
And tech analysts globally are watching this incredibly closely.
Because Colombia is one of Latin America's largest digital economies. The two candidates have completely divergent positions on AI policy, the role of U.S. tech platforms, and data sovereignty. Whoever wins is going to set a regulatory precedent for the entire region.
And that concept of data sovereignty, meaning who legally controls the data and how algorithms are allowed to operate within a country's borders, connects directly to the most alarming health statistic in our sources today.
Yeah, this data from the CDC honestly stopped me in my tracks. According to new figures released today, approximately 1 in 5 American children is now affected by obesity. To put the scale of that in perspective, in 1970, that number was 1 in 20.
It is a staggering public health failure. And the researchers are pointing to a specific compounding formula.
Right. They point to reduced physical activity, the aggressive marketing of ultra-processed foods, overall screen time, and specifically the role of algorithmic recommendation systems on social media in shaping children's eating and activity habits.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? Like, hold on, I need to stop you there. 1 in 5 kids is a massive crisis. But blaming that on an algorithm feels like a huge leap. Aren't we just letting junk food companies and, frankly, bad parenting off the hook by blaming lines of code? Like, how does an algorithm physically make a child unhealthy?
This raises an important question, and it explores the exact mechanism that makes that Colombia election so critical. You cannot look at an algorithm as just abstract math.
Okay, what is it then?
These recommendation systems are engineered by behavioral psychologists. They utilize variable reward schedules, which are the exact same cognitive mechanics used in casino slot machines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they create infinite scroll loops that literally override a child's impulse control, reducing physical activity by keeping them paralyzed in front of a screen for hours.
So they literally can't look away.
Exactly. And simultaneously, the code hyper-targets them with advertisements normalizing ultra-processed diets. When you realize that the algorithm is the actual environment that children are inhabiting for hours a day, the physical impact becomes undeniable.
That makes total sense when you frame it as an environment.
Right. So how nations like Colombia choose to assert data sovereignty directly dictates how aggressively those algorithms are allowed to reach into homes and hijack human behavior. The digital environment is physically altering the biology of a generation.
When you break down the actual psychology of the code, it makes you realize how entirely interconnected all of this is. And for you, the listener, I really hope this deep dive has mapped out those connections.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
We started with the physical reality of the U.S. Navy escorting commercial ships through a heavily mined Strait of Hormuz just to keep the gas in your car affordable. We watched sports act as both a geopolitical pressure cooker and a deeply human stage for a father and son.
Definitely.
We saw how legacies, whether it's a sitcom trope, a lost country song, or a political career, have to be actively fought for. And we ended by seeing how the invisible algorithms in our pockets are subtly, but physically, altering the health of the next generation. Global policy isn't abstract. At the end of the day, it is deeply personal.
It is all part of the same system, and honestly, it leaves us with one final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Our sources showed us today that physical infrastructure, like the massive drainage systems in New Orleans, can be successfully engineered to withstand the brute force of a tropical storm.
Right.
We know how to build defenses against physical threats. But as Colombia votes on the future of AI regulation, and the CDC warns of the physical harm caused by infinite scrolls and engagement loops, it begs the ultimate question. Can our digital infrastructure ever be successfully engineered to protect human health? Or will we permanently remain at the mercy of the algorithm?
Man, that is a question we are all going to have to answer, probably sooner rather than later. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the algorithms, keep exploring these connections on your own, and we will catch you next time.